The French reconquest of Normandy from 1448 to 1450 marked a decisive turning point in the Hundred Years' War, effectively ending English hopes of retaining control over much of northern France. Following a series of military successes by Charles VII and the French, the region of Normandy, which had been under English control for most of the war, was gradually retaken by the French, culminating in the Battle of Formigny and the fall of Cherbourg in 1450. Background: the English hold on Normandy. Normandy had been one of the most valuable and strategic regions in France, serving as a key stronghold for the English during much of the Hundred Years' War. The English had occupied Normandy since 1204 and had maintained their control throughout much of the conflict. Despite the French resurgence in the previous decades, the English still held significant portions of northern France in 1448, including the vital port of Rouen, which had been retaken by the English in 1419. By the 1440s, however, English power in France was severely weakened. Charles VII had successfully repelled English forces from much of southern and central France, and the Treaty of Picquigny in 1444 had further isolated the English. Additionally, the Burgundian alliance, once a key English supporter, was now aligned with the French, further undermining English efforts to maintain control over French territory. The French Campaign, 1448 to 1450. 1. Initial successes. In 1448, Charles VII began his campaign to reclaim Normandy. The French army, bolstered by experienced commanders and a well-organized military structure, launched a series of offensives against the English garrisons in the region. Rouen, the most important English-held city in Normandy, was the primary target. French forces besieged the city and launched a series of military strikes against English fortifications. 2. The Battle of Formigny 1450. The pivotal moment in the Reconquest came with the Battle of Formigny on April 15, 1450. The French army, commanded by Jean de Bourbon and François de Surienne, faced off against an English force under Thomas Kyriel. Despite the English having a strong position, the French employed effective tactics, including the use of artillery and cavalry, to decisively defeat the English. The English forces were overwhelmed, and many were captured or killed, leading to a French victory. The defeat at Formigny effectively broke the back of English resistance in Normandy. 3. The fall of Cherbourg, 1450. After the victory at Formigny, the French quickly moved to capture the remaining English strongholds in Normandy. The port city of Cherbourg, one of the last remaining English-held territories in the region, was the final target. After a protracted siege, Cherbourg fell to the French in October 1450. This marked the end of English control over Normandy and a decisive moment in the war. Consequences of the Reconquest. The French reconquest of Normandy in 1448 to 1450 had far-reaching consequences for the outcome of the Hundred Years' War. 1. End of English hopes in Normandy. The loss of Normandy was a devastating blow to English ambitions in France. The region had been a key base for English control in the war, and its reconquest by the French deprived the English of crucial territory and resources. 2. Strengthening of Charles VII's position. The success of the French army under Charles VII solidified his control over much of France and reinforced his legitimacy as king. It marked a final blow to the English claim to the French throne, which had been one of the central issues of the war. 3. Psychological impact on the English. The loss of Normandy, along with the earlier French victories at Patay, 1429, and the Siege of Orleans, 1429, shattered English morale and their will to continue the war. The defeat weakened support for the war among the English nobility and the populace, leading to a gradual shift toward peace. 4. The final stages of the war. The reconquest of Normandy effectively ended the Edwardian phase of the Hundred Years' War and set the stage for the Lancastrian phase to unravel. English forces were now confined to the port cities of Calais and Gascony, and the French began to dominate the remainder of the conflict. Conclusion. The French reconquest of Normandy between 1448 and 1450 was a defining moment in the Hundred Years' War, signaling the end of English dominance in France and marking the beginning of the final French victory. The Battle of Formigny and the fall of Cherbourg were decisive in breaking English resistance in Normandy, and the region's reconquest helped to solidify Charles VII's power. With Normandy lost, England's position in France was irreparably weakened, setting the stage for the ultimate conclusion of the war.